As far as RBI is concerned, we were expecting the three-day meeting to start this week. It looks like there could be a pause. We don't know whether there's going to be a pivot or not.
It's a good thing. I mean, the increases were to keep inflation in control. As of April, it is 4.7, which is as against 7.8 the same time last year. So things are looking good. I mean, people would expect a reduction, but then RBI, the banks are flush with funds, so money is available due to the other thing that has happened, that 2,000 rupee notes are coming back into banks. So liquidity is there with the banks. So that control is there. So it's all good news.
Okay. Will it be a good news? Will it won't be a good news? Abhijit, what is your view of what's going to come out of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting?
Look, Shweta, I think this is going to be one of the easiest things to predict this time. Last in the last MPC, it was really one of the big surprises that we were all, we were all caught by surprise. But I don't think today, or rather this week, anyone will be left guessing what the RBI can do. If the RBI hikes the rates right now, it will be out of all textbooks. Nobody will say that it ought to hike again rates, because inflation, the tiger seems to have been tamed finally. That's one. And the other thing is reduction. Reduction, it's too premature. You cannot just slash rates right now. The inflation is just on the decline. So if you again stoke another round of inflation, that will be incredible. I mean, nobody will advise you for that. So the only thing that the RBI can do is to hold rates at this level, not only for this month, but I can also put out my neck and say, perhaps even for the next meeting. It might sound a bit premature, but I think RBI is right now entering a sort of an autopilot mode over the next 2-3 quarters, and then again see when a reduction is possible. That's my take.
Okay, and I also want to understand, is this going to be a pause and not a pivot? Are we looking at RBI holding on to rates just as yet? And you pointed out that in the next meeting as well, they could hold on to any sort of increase in rates. But is this going to be a pause and not a pivot, or is this going to be a pivot because the inflation is well within the control now?
Look, I think there is no question of a pivot right now. It will be a pause. Look, there are two things that we are actually ignoring right now. We are just looking at the supply side. Now, at the demand side, what happens to the supply side, nobody knows. People are predicting a grim summer due to El Nino, disturbances in monsoons, perhaps slightly deficient rainfall. That is one possibility. The second is the ripple effect of the slowdown that's going to take place or is already taking place in the Eurozone and the US. So these two problems are there. So what that, the effect of that, impact of that is going to be, we have all to watch out. So the RBI can actually manage the liquidity and our appetite for goods. That the RBI can manage. But according to what's happening to the supply, RBI has no control over it. So, holding rates right now is the safest and best bet that any prudent organization or institutions like the RBI can actually do.
Okay. Let's bring in Krishna Kumar at this point in time. Krishna, good morning to you. Oh, we have lost Krishna at this juncture, but I also want to understand from you, Abhijit, how are you seeing the macroeconomic condition progressing from here on? We discussed in our Friday's bulletin that situation is better than what it was about a couple of weeks ago. It's been a good May for India overall in terms of from the UPI to the auto sales number to overall macroeconomic parameters that were released by the government. It was the last quarter of last fiscal year was also very good. We are hoping that India will be growing in the last financial year about 7.2%. We don't know whether that number is going to be revised downward, but so far it seems like we are headed to a good start.
Well, absolutely. Just tell me, in how many years can we recall having such a fruitful or productive month of May? I cannot really recall it right now. I perhaps have to rummage my notes to find that out. May has been one of the spectacular years as the country is emerging from the gloom of both the inflation and COVID. just see, everything seems to have turned. You go back to 1st of May, you come back to 31st of May. The pictures are completely different. As you said, the Q4 growth numbers, they have been the cherry on the cake. Also, look at all the most of the macroeconomic variables. As you say, the biggest relief is obviously the inflation. Growth is back, inflation is down. More important, what my colleague beside you told say, that despite rates being held at the current level, the liquidity is up thanks to this 2000 rupees recall. So, all in all, you have money that the banks can loan to the industry without lowering the rates. So there is a lot of money. You also have the rates held on to the which you can hold on to the current level, and see the inflation coming down very dramatically. So obviously there is some advantage of the base effect, but then inflation is all about statistics and base effects. So the base effect actually irons out over a period of time. I think the inflation in June, in May, will be equally at a comfort level. So RBI doesn't need to worry about inflation right now. Perhaps it only has to, the two things it has to watch out is perhaps the impact of any deficient train, if it is deficient in the first place, if there is a delay, so that can cause some problems. And the second is the impact of the Eurozone and the US. Because of our growing export sectors, that may actually hurt it to a degree which perhaps the RBI or any other institution might not have envisaged. So these two are the only sort of possible Achilles heel that the policymakers have to watch out for. Other than that, it is going to be quite a smooth run, at least even in June, that we can find out. Oh, I forgot to mention another thing, that is the GST, the revenue. Just look at the revenue of the government. I mean, this year I think the revenue position will be very comfortable because that free food scheme is gone. So a lot of the government expenditure is off their balance sheet, and revenue is growing. GST is actually growing very fast. This is the third month that it has been above the 1.5 trillion level. So all in all, where exactly do you see worries of worry points? I don't see any other than these two that I mentioned: deficient trains perhaps, and the Eurozone slowdown.
All right, I'm given to understand Krishna Kumar is back with us. Krishna, we are of course discussing RBI's monetary policy meet and what could be the likely outcome of that. From what we've discussed so far, it looks like there may not be a pivot just as yet, but MPC, they're absolutely going to pause any hike.
Right. The fact of the matter is that for now, it's a pause, Shweta. It might become a pivot eventually. We don't know when it's going to become a pivot. For now, it's a pause, and also it's a continuation of the pause. That's the most important thing to notice at this stage, because you're talking about the second time around in recent times that the RBI is likely to hold on to its repo rate of 6.5%. And that's because this is a repetition for the month of April, and you're seeing this trend continuing simply because the inflation is easing. And some bankers, some analysts say that it will be the month of October by the time we see a rate cut, if at all. So, and we are in June right now. We have July, August, and September to go. So we're looking at the next 3 months where there can't be any possibility of a rate cut, which is the pivot that we're talking about over here. But there's a good chance that for the next 2 to 3 months there will be no rate hikes. So when it comes to those car loans and home loans, you can breathe easy that it's not going to go up any further. But there's a good chance that it could even become cheaper 3 to 4 months down the line. So as far as consumers are concerned, people watching this are concerned, I'd say just the same way RBI is waiting and watching on inflation, they should also wait and watch on the RBI and what it does with the interest rates before they go for that loan.
Absolutely. A wait and watch there by RBI and a wait and watch perhaps.
I just wanted to add a point to what Krishna was alluding. Absolutely. The rate cut might actually come just on the eve of the festive season.
Just around the festive season.
So just around Diwali time in October.
Absolutely. And that is the time where we could see loans getting cheaper if at all there is a rate cut. That is an interesting story.